Hello and welcome to another video about the Fighting Fantasy Gamebook series. Today I want to talk about and review and compare the Deathtrap Dungeon infamous Japanese covered version of the Fighting Fantasy book. So if you don't know, the Fighting Fantasy books were originally produced by Puffin in the UK, and that was from the early 80s to the mid 90s, and that's when they stopped. And then over here in the UK, Wizard Books took up re-releasing all the books and releasing a few new ones. That's what you can see here. Meanwhile, over in Japan, they had a re-release of the books with a slightly different style, and I guess that's what we'll be looking at today. So there are three of them. There's House of Hell, Sword of the Samurai, and Deathtrap Dungeon that got this treatment. And yeah, if you haven't seen this before, you might be quite shocked at the difference, but they've gone for a manga art style, and they've also gone for internal art replacements as well. So as comparison, this is the original Puffin version. It's classic fantasy, and now, as you can see, it's more of a manga style. Now, first thing you'll notice is that, well, one, they're in Japanese. Let's just confirm that. Yep. So I can't read a word of Japanese, but I'm informed that all the writing inside is pretty much identical, which is quite funny when you have a look at some of the differences in the illustrations. But I have to say, it's a little bit smaller. I think this is quite typical of Japanese books. It reads right to left and top to bottom, as is the way there, although things have changed over the years. But yeah, we have right to left, and also it's nice and small, very tidy looking. I really like the size of this. It's a nice, concise book. Feels really nice to handle. It's got this dust cover on. Inside is plain. It's not actually illustrated on the cover if you take the dust cover off, which is interesting. Don't know how typical that is. So it's all in Japanese, so I can't read it. And I think what I'd like to do is go through now every single illustration, and I'd like to start with the internals, and we'll compare what the original artwork was and what the new artwork was. Okay, so we're going to ignore the plates. There's some lovely plates here, colour plates at the beginning. We'll come back to those. So let's have a look. So after that point, it's all completely normal stuff going on. And first number we have is an illustration for number 35, so let's get to that. And here, I believe, is the jewel-eyed idol. So this is quite an important picture. Notice they're all on the left. In Japanese books, they quite often have the picture on the left, same as we have in our Fighting Fantasy book. But in their case, it's going in the direction of reading, so that you get to see it first. Whereas ours is sort of on the inside, out the way. So 35. So if we can compare this. This is what we're looking at here in terms of difference. And yeah, I mean, this is quite an important part of the book. I've never completed the book, but I imagine that's an important part of the book. as you will know as a reader. Okay, so the next picture we have is for 49, and this, as we get to start to see straight away, something that's happened in translation here is that the leprechauns, yes, this is the leprechauns, so if we look over here, the Western version, original version rather, because the Japanese did get an original version as well, so they did get this art in the first version in the Puffin years. So this is the leprechauns, and they have been changed to kind of manga style witches here. So yeah, we start to see the thing where a lot of the images are turned into female versions. And next we have, okay, so this is the ornate dwarf on ornate chair, but this time we have Throm. So if we look into the original version, this is quite a famous image. Yeah, and that's been translated to a side-on view. And another thing we get a lot in this version is we get to see you. So that is you from the cover. Tyrus Blair attire from like Golden Axe, as I like to think of it. This is Throm, who's rather handsome, one of the few main characters to stay male. And this is the dwarf guy. So yeah, compare it to this. I want to do it this way rather than scan it all in, but appreciate it's not the best way. Now the next one we have is actually not in the original, but it is, and you'll see what I mean when we get there. Now, you can recognise what's going on here. This is actually the mirror, and you have the mirror demon reaching out and grabbing you, yet again you. And that hasn't got a direct comparison, it's actually on a different page, but we do have a mirror demon in Deathtrap Dungeon, which is just over here on 74. So here you go. Here's the mirror demon in our original 80s version, and this is the mirror demon reaching out and grabbing you, which is cool. It's a different take on it. Next we have 134. If you know the book off by heart, you'll know what's coming. Okay, so here we have you yet again, and this is the Manticore, and this is a male Manticore, which is different, or more consistent with the original perhaps. Quick comparison over here to 1, 3, 4. So here's the original. There we go. And this one's, I've seen this one around. You don't get to see all of these around, but I've definitely seen this one around. And yet again, you're there. So next is 153. So click through 153. Okay, this one's an interesting one. So let's get to 153 in the original version, and you can make a better comparison. So this is actually the skull and bowling ball game, or ball game, as you can see here. This is the original, and this is kind of explains the game more in visual form, which is interesting. And also you'll notice that we have slightly different style character there. That's known as a Chibi, which translates as small and cute. It generally ends up looking like sort of a big head version, slightly as well of the character, and that's a common manga trope. So it will come up. Some animes will use it in the middle of things. Some animes and mangas will use it throughout, but it's commonly just a trope to just be used when you want to show display someone as being more cute for some reason, or cutesy and sort of maybe powerless. I don't know. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one we have is 159, and okay, so this is actually the Blood Beast. So this is one we don't get an internal illustration for in the original book, but of course we do get it on the cover. So let's have a look at it on the cover. So we do get the Blood Beast. It's a beautiful cover, and there it is in its pool. Yeah, everything's accounted for, and of course you are there as well, and you are an anime girl, which is fine. I'm not going to comment on that. So let's get to the next one, 170. Is, now this one might take your interest. This one is actually the elf champion being tackled by a snake. Was it a python in it? Let's have a comparison. Let's find it. 170. Oh, they're too close together, that's what it is. There we go, there's the elf. So yeah, there's the elf being surrounded by a snake, and as much as people might think that from the cover that there's a bit more lewdness in this sort of manga version, I have to say that there hasn't really been so far, as you might notice in the illustrations internally. And this one from the original is probably a bit more risque than the new version. So there we go. No need for double standard comparisons. Yeah, fantasy in the West certainly had its own flair for the lewd nature of things. Let's now look for reference 210. Aha. So 210 is the Chained Man. Now this is one instance where it can be quite hilarious and stark when you compare the text, because I'm informed that the text is identical. As you can see in the Western version, or the original version, which is also in Japan, this is the one that kind of looks like Ian, the writer of the book, and we compare it to the female looking version of the old, just the Chained Man. And if we actually read the text, it's right here actually. It says, you enter a room in which a man is in tattered clothes, is standing chained to the wall by his left arm. So yeah, it's described in the text. As far as I know, I can't read it, but anyone that can, there we go, that's what it says. If I'm pointing at the right bit. And supposedly it's described as a man still, so that's something just of note, that nothing was changed in the text while turning some of the characters to female. Okay, so this is another interesting one. Let's look at for it in the main so you can see what's going on. So here we have the troglodytes in the original, and here we have the troglodytes in the manga style version, and we have the Chibi effect again down here in 3 panels. You might be wondering what's going on there. These are actually the 3 options you have for the thing. So if you have a look over here at 230, your options were to walk up and talk to the troglodytes, try to creep past them, or drink a doppelganger potion. And that's actually what you have down here. You're either walking up and talking to them, get a hand out there, you're going to sneak past them, or you're taking a potion. So I think that's pretty cool. Moving on to 2, 4, 5. Okay, 2, 4, 5, and this is the Pit Fiend, which now has wings and you are in it. And there's another panel where you're attacking it, which is cool. But it's different. So let's see if we can see the picture in here. You will undoubtedly remember if you read Out of the Pit, or you remember this book fondly. The Pit Fiend is actually more like a Tyrannosaurus looking creature in the original, and in this other version we have something with more like wings or something going on there. You know, it's called a Pit Fiend, so you could definitely take liberties with what that would be. I mean, technically I think a Tyrannosaurus, they do exist in fighting fantasy, so it probably makes sense to make the Pit Fiend a little bit more different. But yeah, I'm not trying to justify it, just saying that's a possibility. Moving on to 264. Okay, 264. Now this, I believe, are 2 orcs fighting. Let's find it over here. Compare. Oh, sorry, hobgoblins fighting. Yeah. So that's the original. And this is the new one. They're still fighting, and again we have a chibi-ish, you know, the big head view of the 3 options. So let's have a look at what these options are. 264. Again, it's try to talk to them, attack them, or slip by unnoticed, and that's what we have. We have talk to them, attack them with your sword, or slip by unnoticed. I think that's really cool. It's totally different. So now we have 282 coming up, and here we have, oh my gosh, the beautiful body of Throm. Now Throm is quite a well beloved character, so how you may feel about this change, or his style in this one. I mean, it's still him. Let's have a look at the original with his eye patch. There we go, the beautiful Throm with his eye patch. Or, yeah, not everyone could tell that it was necessarily an eye patch, but it's definitely an eye patch. And here we can see much more clearly he's got the eye patch, and you know, at least they're equal opportunities. Moving on, 299. Now what is coming up in 299? You may know. I forget. Okay, so we've just had a male version of Throm, still male, and this I believe is another one that's kept male, and that's his brother, Barbarian, or who we find. So I should really say spoiler for the book, because he did. So I think we find his brother quite early on in the book, and I haven't finished it, but I've got that far. and this is, in comparison, this is pretty much shot for shot. Yeah, it's very close to the original, but you still have yourself peeping in there, which is something you don't get very often in the original art. So yeah, that's Throm's brother gone from the game, from the dungeon. Next we have 3, 1, 2, and it's another female change up, I believe. Compare it to I don't know if the gender of the ninja is mentioned in the book, but this is the ninja, one of the heroes going in. We've had the barbarians and we've had the elf now, and this is the ninja, and this is the version that we get in the manga version. And yeah, pretty cool, pretty different. Yeah, nothing else to say about that really. Let's move on to 339. So 339, and it's another 3-panel one this time. So let's go through what this is. Okay, so this is the paragraph where you touch a doorknob and it punches you. It's obviously a shape changing type thing. And in this version we're getting 3 panels worth. So we've got touching the handle, the fist coming out, and pow in your stomach. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's a different version, different way of looking at it. Next we have 347. 347. So this one we don't actually have to look up at all unless we want to look up the paragraph. So let's look at the paragraph actually, and I'll show you why. So this one did not have an illustration at all, and it's just you chained up. So let's have a look at what that paragraph is. And you may notice there's no options, so that might make it clear. It actually says, the dwarf shakes his head, saying, all brawn and no brain is not enough to master the trial of champions. I regret you have failed. You will not be allowed to leave in case you impart its secrets to others. However, you have done well to get so far, and I will appoint you my servant for the coming years to prepare the dungeon for its new contestants. So yeah, this is actually an end paragraph. So this is something we don't get to see very often. It's you in your failed state, your bad fate, and yeah, hence why you're being chained up, and yeah, you are now in a life of servitude to the dungeon. So that's the only one that's not got any comparison really, I think. Okay, this is the last internal, and this is 364. And you may be able to tell what it is. I believe it's the same as. If it should get there, because I'm thinking of something else. 364. So yeah, another sort of like for like in terms of layout. This is the original, and this is the new version, and it's Egbert the gnome. So there we go. So yeah, that's House of Hell advertisement on the back. Small picture at the back and writing. Look, as you can see, the actual symbol from the wizard era, proof that it was actually related to the wizard era. And finally, let's have a look at these panels. Okay, so as we've seen on the internals, we actually have the elf in there, we have Throm, and we have a female version of the ninja and that's what's going on here on the cover. Be nice to have the other barbarian. There we go. And we have this warrior thing, set of armour, which I'm not sure what it is. Maybe you can tell me. And these beautiful panels, I have to say, it's absolutely lovely to have colour panels. Here is you fighting with Throm, clearly, from within the book, which is cool. Here we have a double plate of, similar to the cover, get a better view of the ninja, which is wearing lighter colours on the front. No, it's just wearing dark, okay. But yeah, you get a more full view of them, and you get, I think, an orc just thrown in there. There's Throm down there, and there's you with your Tyrus flare, bra armour on, underwear armour, or swimsuit armour, what do you call it, bikini armour, and you can see that this guy a bit better on the inside plate as well, who's some big dark skinned warrior guy with this sort of hockey mask on. Don't ask me what particular orc and warrior they are in the book, and I guess that is it, except the final thing to note is the character sheet. And we have a main character sheet in there, but this has a description of the character which is completely fresh and new, possibly blood type in there or something. I can't read any of the Japanese, I can't be sure. And finally measurements. Now this might be an egregious thing for some people, but it's quite a common trope in manga stuff, certainly gaming, to have measurements, and even without Japanese I can see that that's height, and here we have bust, waist and hips, and that's kind of used to describe a sort of body shape rather than being overly specific or anything. It's usually describing like an hourglass figure and such like that. We have the pictures here, right, so who knows if we really need that, but yeah, that's that. And here are all three of the books in this style, and yeah, I was mostly interested to look into this one because it was the hardest to get hold of, and I got it last, therefore, and hardest to get hold of at a reasonable price as well. Getting hold of these was tough. For a while the only way I could see was through Amazon Japan, and we wouldn't deliver to the UK, so that caused some problems. I didn't really have the contacts that could get hold of it for me either, any of them for me either, but eventually they showed up on Amazon UK as they could come in from Japan, but you could order them on Amazon, which was nice. But they're always as second hand, being sent to you, and as soon as I brought these two, suddenly the price for this one went way up, so I had to wait a long time. It just kept on going up like a tenner a week. It's crazy, but eventually it just went back down to normal reasonable prices, and it's back in the hundreds again, so just be careful if you can afford to buy them at that sort of price and you really want these, then go ahead. And yeah, Deathtrap Dungeon is probably more infamous for its look as well than compared to the other two, which look a bit more conservative. And yeah, I'll admit that yeah, there is a little bit, maybe a little bit too much line there in the pant area on the colour plates at least. Yeah, so I can admit to that. They probably a little bit of less of that might have been less egregious to some people. So, but yeah, it's not. When you look inside, it's nothing really rude or anything like that you would imagine. It's really quite tame. So, yeah, I really like these books. I've May go through image by image on the others as well at some point, but that's the main review for Deathtrap Dungeon, the Bunko release, and I'll try and leave the names of these in Japanese in the description so that you can search them out yourself if you want to.